If I ask you who the legendary Super Saiyan is, I'm sure I'd get a lot of answers, but not all of them are actually right. That isn't your fault though. Dragon Ball is a convoluted series in a lot of ways, due to the multiple continuities that have existed basically since the first anime adaptation began. So let's go through everyone who is or isn't the legendary Super Saiyan. I'll even make a little chart to keep track of them. What better place to start than the very first Super Saiyan who we hear about very vaguely in the original manga? The legend of the Super Saiyan was one that struck fear into the universe, often described as a legendary warrior of the Saiyan race who had no equal. This legend was so well known that even the Grand Elder of the Namekians knew of it, and in hindsight, it was likely written in the Namekian Book of Legends like the Super Saiyan God ritual. The Super Saiyan was said to be a merciless warrior that had an insatiable battle lust, but this was the legend passed down by the Saiyans. The truth about the original Super Saiyan is something that we wouldn't learn until decades later. You see, Toriyama did an interview answering questions about Super Saiyans, and one asked if the original Super Saiyan God and the original Super Saiyan were the same person. I'm going to focus on the Super Saiyan portion of this interview since it's the most relevant to what's being discussed, and I already have a video covering Super Saiyan God. Toriyama tells us the first Super Saiyan was named Yamoshi, and he rebelled against the evil Saiyans that were shaping a negative future for the Saiyans as a whole. Eventually, Yamoshi was cornered by the opposing Saiyans, possibly seeing his comrades die in front of him, and in his desperation, he became the very first Super Saiyan. Yamoshi went on to battle all the evil Saiyans on his own, but ultimately his stamina and the transformation ran out, leading to his death and the legend of the Super Saiyan being born. What's interesting here is Yamoshi is described as a malicious Saiyan, filled with an unquenchable battle lust, but that's due to the perspective of the Saiyans that survived. History is written by the victors, and the evil Saiyans that won saw Yamoshi as the enemy that massacred them easily until his power gave out. So of course, Yamoshi is a legendary Super Saiyan. And even more specifically, he is the legendary Super Saiyan. So the next Saiyan to talk about is obviously Goku, the first Super Saiyan in 1,000 years or something like that. The 1,000 years part of the legend seems to be tacked on randomly at some point by the Saiyans since it doesn't actually matter for the transformation. In the Frieza saga, the entire arc was building up to who would be the Super Saiyan, and it turns out, much like Yamoshi, Goku was fighting an evil regime and saw his comrade die, leading to his transformation. This should be obvious, but yes, Goku is a legendary Super Saiyan, and again, you can even argue he's the legendary Super Saiyan for the modern age. The only reason people don't believe this is because of things we'll talk about later. I just want you to think about it though. Would the Frieza Saga's story make any sense if Goku didn't fulfill the legend of the Super Saiyan that was built up throughout the entire arc? Of course, other characters go on to achieve this legendary transformation as well, and that makes sense, since unlike Yamoshi, who died after unlocking the form, Goku was around, so others could see and understand how he pulled it off. People want to believe the legendary Super Saiyan transformation would be some one-of-a-kind thing, but that's actually not necessary. Something the Saiyans used to think of as unobtainable or exclusive in the past turns out to just be something they feared because they didn't understand it. This even happened in the real world. Mythology and legends made things like the weather and natural disasters far more than they actually are. So Vegeta, Gohan, Goten, and Trunks are all legendary Super Saiyans. In the Buu saga, Vegeta is even baffled by Trunks and Goten accessing Super Saiyan so easily because it's the form of a legendary warrior. So while you may also want the form to be some exclusive thing in order for it to be legendary, the story is showing how the change in the Saiyans that survived has led to more Super Saiyans existing because of their views and greater understanding. I think it's safe to put these characters in a tier below legendary Super Saiyan, not quite achieving its legendary status by fulfilling the legend, but also not too far off either since they do have the transformation. In contrast to this, we have the recurring non-canon Dragon Ball Z movie villain, Broly. Broly is, in his non-canon movies, the legendary Super Saiyan. The transformation that Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, and future Trunks use is nothing but a pale imitation of Broly's true legendary form, and I hate this. Toriyama subverts our expectations of who or what the Super Saiyan is by having a vague legend be used to fuel multiple characters like Vegeta or Captain Ginyu's misunderstanding of it, until Goku ultimately fulfills the legend himself and shares a better understanding of what it is now that he's accessed it. That's the point of the famous Son Goku speech. The Dragon Ball Z Broly movies basically say, no, that misconstrued legend was right. Broly actually fulfills the legend, and the conclusion of the story on Namek is worth undermining, just so this guy with big muscles can rampage across the galaxies, I guess. Even worse, you get the Supplemental Daisenshu, a guidebook that had to tie up the loose ends from Dragon Ball's anime continuity at the time, making the Super Saiyan types to try and make sense of what Goku and the others are when compared to Broly. Just to be clear, the Super Saiyan types have never been canon, and still aren't canon, no matter how much the Dragon Ball Wiki tries to shoehorn them in to fit modern material. It's entirely to explain anime, and more specifically, movie-exclusive content. Anyway, ignoring my opinions on it narratively, in his own continuity, Dragon Ball Z Broly is the legendary Super Saiyan. There's no denying that, but he isn't canon, so it doesn't mean much of anything. Let's just put him in a non-canon legendary Super Saiyan tier. Speaking of things that aren't canon, we have the episode of Bardock, a sequel to the Bardock special that tells the story of what happened after Bardock got engulfed in Frieza's blast. No, of course he didn't die. He got sent to the past, where he protects Planet Plant, the planet that would one day become Planet Vegeta before the Saiyans even arrived on it. In this special episode, Bardock becomes a Super Saiyan and defeats Chilled, an ancestor of Frieza who passes down a warning to his family to beware the Super Saiyan. At least this is actually the right transformation, but much like Broly, this is a non-canon continuity, so within its own continuity, Bardock is the legendary Super Saiyan. But obviously, this story conflicts with the modern story of Yamoshi, so just like Z Broly, this isn't canon, so who the fuck cares? Here's a fun one to think about though. Cell. The first question is Cell even a Super Saiyan? The anime gives him an aura that closely resembles the auras of Super Saiyans like Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks, but that's anime only. He clearly uses what seems to be Super Saiyan Grade 3 as a way to mock Trunks, but you could argue that Cell is just doing what Master Roshi can do. I think that's a bit of a stretch though. First, he doesn't have Master Roshi's DNA. People forget this, but Cell is only made up of 5 characters: Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, Frieza, and King Cold. So who's he getting it from? Second, Cell's form also sacrifices speed for power, just like Grade 3, as shown when he tries it against Gohan. But we've never heard of Roshi having that same issue. And finally, when Cell becomes Super Perfect Cell, he claims his power-up was just like Gohan's, and he has an aura that's exactly like Super Saiyan 2 in both the anime and the manga, implying he was a Super Saiyan before this. At this point, there's gonna be 2 groups of people watching right now. People who think Cell is a Super Saiyan, and people who think Cell isn't a Super Saiyan. If you don't think that Cell's a Super Saiyan at all, then the answer is easy. He isn't a legendary Super Saiyan. If he is a Super Saiyan though, things become a little bit more complicated. I think for a lot of people, the answer is still no, and I'd agree he wouldn't be ranked alongside characters like Goku or Yamoshi, but what about Vegeta, Gohan, Goten, and Trunks? I feel like if Cell is actually a Super Saiyan, he'd be classified alongside these characters. To be fair though, he is very different from them, so I'll put him a bit below them on this chart. I also very briefly want to touch on the original Super Saiyan God. This is the unnamed Saiyan that was mentioned in Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. Due to Toriyama and Dragon Ball Super retconning the existence of an original Super Saiyan God in canon, this character should be treated the way we treat Dragon Ball Z Broly, an episode of Bardock, a non-canon, legend-fulfilling character. I think the answer here is pretty cut and dry though. There's nothing connecting him to the legendary Super Saiyan, so we shouldn't either. He's just the non-canon original Super Saiyan God. I also think it's worth mentioning the Universe 6 Saiyans. While technically Kaba and Caulifla can both transform into Super Saiyans, it's important to note the Universe 6 Saiyans just don't have a Super Saiyan legend, so does this even count? You can let me know what you think in the comments before I give my opinion on them, but I assume you're more interested in Kale, who's unique for quite a few reasons. The first is her similarities to Dragon Ball Z Broly, and that makes sense since she was designed by Toei specifically to be like Broly due to his popularity. But notably, she isn't called the legendary Super Saiyan. Before you comment, what about when Vegeta says she is? Hear me out. That's just not what Vegeta says. I don't know what marketing team at Funimation translated this, because he actually says that might be the Saiyan's true form. As notable translator Herms pointed out at the time, due to the vagueness, Vegeta could be saying that all Saiyans used to be like Kale, or this is Kale's own true form. Both don't actually say anything about her legendary status, but to be fair, the Dragon Ball Super manga does. In contrast to Universe 7's legendary Super Saiyan, who's mainly feared due to him killing evil Saiyans before his own untimely death due to the power running out, Universe 6 has a Legendary Saiyan. This Demon Saiyan appears every 1,000 years and goes on a rampage with ever-increasing power until eventually that power leads to their own destruction. Kale is clearly and directly stated to be this Saiyan, and is even shown to be destroying her own body with her power. Notably, Super Saiyan Berserker, the official name for the form Kale uses in the Dragon Ball Super anime, is very aesthetically different from its manga counterpart, so it's more than likely that these are actually just different forms. With all that said, I'd call Kale the Legendary Saiyan, since that's the legend in Universe 6, which likely means that Cabba and Caulifla aren't legendary in any way, which funny enough makes none of them Legendary Super Saiyans in any capacity, so we'll put Cabba and Caulifla in not Legendary Super Saiyans, and we'll put Kale in her own wrong legend category. Finally, we're back to Broly, specifically Dragon Ball Super's version of him, and I kind of get the confusion here due to him being a reimagining of a non-canon character, but much like Kale, another Dragon Ball Super version of Broly, he isn't actually the Legendary Super Saiyan. The big piece of evidence people point to is this line from a scientist early in the movie saying that Broly might be the Super Saiyan of legend, but that doesn't matter. The Saiyans knew very little about the Super Saiyan, as I've already established, and this is more than likely a fun nod to Dragon Ball Z Broly rather than anything serious. If we took it seriously, every time someone was called a Super Saiyan, Goku and Vegeta would have been Super Saiyans way earlier. Hell, even Gohan gets called a Super Saiyan in the Saiyan saga before Toriyama actually fleshed out the concept. What is serious though is Paragus' reaction to Vegeta's transformation into a Super Saiyan. In the subtitles, he says, "like the legend," and in Japanese, he explicitly uses the same phrasing as would be used for the Legendary Super Saiyan name. This movie was written by Toriyama, don't forget, so reminding us of what the Super Saiyan of legend was done intentionally. Broly does transform eventually, but much like Kale, these aren't Legendary Super Saiyan forms. This first form is Ikari, also known as Wrathful, a form that allows the user to use the power of an Ozaru without the moon or the cumbersome body size. This isn't even a Super Saiyan form though, so it's not worth discussing any further. The next form is just called Super Saiyan, but it's different because it's stacked on top of his Ikari form. While this form is just called Super Saiyan, there's likely an annoying reason for that. Future Trunks over here decided to take the name Super Saiyan Ikari for himself before fucking off to a different timeline that he's already in. As far as Toriyama and even the DBS manga are concerned, those are his two forms, but Toei added in Super Saiyan Full Power. This green-haired form is reminiscent of Dragon Ball Z Broly, but all it actually is a more refined mix of Super Saiyan and Ikari. Like I said, this form doesn't even exist in the manga, and with Broly controlling his Super Saiyan form in the latest Dragon Ball Super manga chapter, I don't think we'll see this ever again. Needless to say, Dragon Ball Super Broly isn't the Legendary Super Saiyan, but now that he has some access to the form of the Super Saiyan of legend, I'd put him with Vegeta and the Half Saiyans. So the final rankings are Goku and Yamoshi as the canon Legendary Super Saiyans, Vegeta, Gohan, Goten, Trunks, Broly, and Cell are canon Legendary-ish Super Saiyans, with Cell at the bottom of that list for sure. Bardock and Dragon Ball Z Broly are non-canon Legendary Super Saiyans. Kale is a wrong Legendary Saiyan, while Cabba, Caulifla, and the original Super Saiyan God are just not Legendary Super Saiyans at all, due to the Universe 6 Saiyans not having a legend about it, and Super Saiyan God being a completely different form altogether. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and thank you so very much for watching.